to module 8.2, addition with real numbers. In this lecture video, I'm going to show you how to add and subtract with the negatives. Okay, so basically, I mentioned the word called term back in 1.7 when we first introduced the order operation back in module 1. So I'm going to formally introduce the word terms because to understand algebra, you got to understand what this word means, okay? And the way how we see everything that we do in algebra is basically we basically kind of divide everything up by the idea of term, okay? So like I said before, back in module 1.7, a term is really just an object. Physically, it's an object. So on paper, or in algebra, a term is the following four things. It's a number, such as 4, a -7, an 8, a 6. Any number is actually considered as one term. A term is also a variable. Single-lettered variable by itself is considered as one term. X alone, Y alone, okay, Z alone, maybe like T standing alone, is considered as one term. But the definition gets a little bit tricky when it comes to this third one. A product of some number is considered as one term. So the word product means multiplication. So what we're saying here is a multiplication between anything is considered as one term. Okay? Multiplication between anything is considered as one term. So just like my 2 times 3 here. 2 times 3 equal to 6. 6 is a number. So a number is a term. And this 6 comes from the multiplication between 2 and 3. So multiplication between anything is only considered as one term. Okay? Even though 2 times 3 is two different numbers, because the multiplication sign here between them make them only one term. So for another example, 2x. 2x means 2 times x. So multiplication between the 2 and the x only makes it one term. So individually, what do we call the 2? What do we call the x? We call them factors. Just like 2 and the 3 are the factors of 6. Okay? So individually, they are not numbers or variables. They're individually within one term, we call them factors. All right, let me give you a quick example. What about x, y, z? X, y, z, how many terms? Well, multiplication between the x, the y, and the z only makes it one term. All right, so multiplication between anything is only one term. All right, very important that we see that because this gets tricky. All right, the fourth one, a quotient between some numbers. Quotient means division. Another way of writing division is through fraction. So what we're saying here is a fraction between any numbers is only considered as one term. Okay, but I'm not saying every fraction is a term. So for example, if I have something like 3 over 4 maybe times maybe something like 16 over 15. Okay, I got two fractions here. Because of multiplication between them, this is only considered as one term. All right, so if you think back on module 2, multiplication and division is very different. We do those multiplication in of fraction very differently compared to adding and subtracting fraction, because addition and subtraction of fraction is actually trying to combine two different terms. All right, so when we need to combine two different terms, that got to be very different than when we only dealing with one term. Okay, so when we first introduced order operation, I keep on indicating the addition sign and the subtraction sign that are outside the parenthesis. And the reason why I did that is because these addition and subtraction signs outside the parenthesis is what I'm using to separate between our terms. Okay? And these adding, addition, and subtraction sign always go with the terms that follows. So when it comes to identify how many terms an expression has, the first thing we look for is these addition and subtraction signs outside the parentheses. So for example, my 2 minus 4 down here, subtraction sign here outside the parentheses, that means what's in front of it is one term. What's behind it is also one term. So now I'm saying these addition and subtraction sign go with the terms that follow. So that means this subtraction sign actually belongs to the term that's followed behind it. So my second term is actually a negative 4. So that means this problem I actually have 2 terms. Okay. So let me go ahead and mention this before I forget. The symbols add and subtract. When we see addition and subtraction signs, okay, it's the same symbol, but there are 2 ways we can actually say look at them. When you say add, subtract, or plus or minus, same thing. Compare that to versus when we say positive and negative. What's the difference? Well, when we use the wording positive and negative, remember now the symbol is the same. When we say positive and negative, that means we're looking at them as individual object or individual terms. Okay, which is different when we say add and subtract. Add and subtract or plus and minus is when we're trying to do the operation. So when we first read the problem 2 minus 4, the minus sign tells me that I have 2 different terms. One plus or minus sign outside the parentheses separate between 2 different terms. So it kind of trigger our brain thinking about here I got 2 different terms. So when I'm ready to combine them, okay, then I'm gonna say addition or subtraction. It's the same symbol, 2 sets of wording, okay, which means our view about our terms changes. One of them is doing operation, one of them is looking at them as positive or negative terms. Okay, everything we do in algebra is dictated by how many terms the problem has. Okay, so this word, like terms, okay, I mentioned this, I use this wording very often when it comes to algebra. Like terms are terms with the same variable and the same exponents. Okay, in order to be considered as like terms, you got to have the same variable and also the same exponent. So my question here, 2x and 2x squared, are they like terms? The answer is actually no, because 2x, the exponent on top of the x, since we don't see 1, is automatically assumed to be 1. Okay, I think we mentioned something like that when we talked about exponent rule before. Now 2x squared, the exponent on top of the x is a 2. So because the exponents are different, even though we use the same variable, these 2 terms are not like terms. We care about like terms because only like terms can be combined. Okay, so combined like term means add or subtract. Terms with the same variable and the same exponents. So in the future lecture video, I use this phrase a lot, combine like terms. Okay, that means we are adding or subtracting. So there are many different ways to learn how to add and subtract with negative. Okay, ultimately, I want all of us be able to look at a problem like 5x. Ultimately, I want us to be able to say 5x minus 6x Okay, and right away we know what the answer is, which is negative x. This is ultimately my goal of showing y'all how to add and subtract differently as compared to the way you learned them before. So the more direct way of learning how to add and subtract with a negative is by thinking about the signs of the terms. If my terms have the same sign, we will mentally, in our head, add them. Okay? And we got to keep the sign of the term. All right? If my terms have different sign, then we will mentally subtract them. So for example, if I have a negative 2 minus 4, all right? Subtraction sign outside the parenthesis tell me in front of it, negative 2 is a term. Behind it, negative 4 is my second term. So since these two terms have the same sign, mentally we will add them to say 6. Because both terms are negative, my answer will be negative 6. We got to keep the sign of the terms, okay? Well, a lot of students say, well, we thought negative makes a positive. That is true when it comes to negative number times or divides another negative number. That's actually multiplying or dividing, which multiplication division only makes a one term. Here we are actually combining terms. That means I have more than just one term that we are dealing with. So the rules are different when we are combining multiple terms versus dealing with one term. Okay, so in our mind, we got to literally separating. Are we multiplying, dividing, which is one set of rule, versus we are combining? That means add or subtracting. Okay, our brain got to be able to make that switch. Now up here, my 2 minus 4. If you think about 2 minus 4 here, all right, subtraction sign outside the parenthesis, separate between two terms in front of it. Positive 2 is one term. Behind it, 4 is a term, but the subtraction sign goes with the 4. So this problem, I actually have two terms. So when it comes to combining them, terms with different sign, we will subtract. So normally when I subtract 4 and 2, I end up with a 2. Because I have more negative term than positive term, then my answer will be negative. Okay, that's the reason why. Now, the most common way learning adding and subtracting negative is thinking about number line, which is nothing wrong with that. I just want to show y'all the more direct way of thinking about adding and subtracting negative. All right, I'm going to do this one here, negative 32 plus 47 first, and I'm going to do the one below it. And we will kind of take a look at what it means to have parentheses for my term. So here, negative 32 plus 47, we're actually not adding here. Okay, this is where it is strange. We say plus 47, but we are not actually adding because the addition sign here separate between my two terms. I got negative 32 and I got positive 47. These two terms have different sign, so in our mind, we actually subtract them. Okay, even though the problem says finding the sum, but realistically, our mind is telling us to subtract. So when we normally subtract 47 and 32, we should get about 15. All right, so when we subtract terms, okay, we got to remember, if I have more positive term than negative, then my answer will be positive. So my answer is positive 15. All right, when it comes to combining multiple terms, okay, according to associative property, I can combine any two terms first of my choice. So here I have two addition signs outside the parentheses, so that will separate two terms. So my first term is negative 4, my second term is positive 15, and my third term is positive 27. So I'm going to combine my positive 15 and positive 27 first. So here we're simply going to read 15 plus 27. 15 plus 27 should be 2, 3, 42. All right, my first term is still -4, so every term can only have one sign. So my 42, oh Lord, my 42 is actually positive 42. So this problem now just become -4 plus 42. So plus sign outside the parentheses separate between two terms, -4 and a positive 42. So terms with different sign, we will subtract. So when I subtract them, all right, normally 42 minus 4 is about 30, let's see, 36, 38. Okay, so what was about 38? So because I got more positive term than negative term, my answer should still be positive 38. All right. Now, some students see it this way. When they see 15 plus 27 is 42, and in front of it you still have a -4, they see it as 42 minus 4, which is still correct, because when it comes to commutative property, let me draw some picture real quick, okay? If I put a heart in the front, a star on the back, here I got two separate terms. What difference does it make if I have the star in the front and a heart on the back? It is still the same exact two terms. That's the reason why commutative property allow me to swap the order of my terms. Okay, and that's still going to be exactly the same thing. I'm still having the same exact two terms. Okay, so if you can see it as 42 minus 4, that would be very awesome. Okay, so let's take a look at this problem here. This is one of the most trickiest problem when it comes to showing students the more direct way how to add and subtract negative. A lot of students know 8 plus -5 is gonna be positive 3. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how to look at this slightly different. This addition sign outside the parentheses separate between two terms. My first term is positive 8. But here, my second term is behind the plus sign is supposed to be -5. But this addition sign actually goes with the term that follows. So my second term here actually has two signs. Okay, some student will say this is plus a -5. But I'm going to caution you for saying it like that, because if we ever do problems that involving with order operation, maybe if there's an exponent up here, then when you say plus and negative, that actually does not make any sense then. So here I want you to see it as this is a positive. Okay, this whole term is really saying a positive 1 times the -5. Okay, so where is the 1 come from? Well, that goes back to the concept of when you see a number, that number is always times by 1. So when you see that number is a term. So after we identify the term, we can say that term can always be times by 1. Now, if the problem want to have any other number in front of my parenthesis here, it will actually write a 2, maybe like a 3, something like that. So when it doesn't, so once I identify my term, when there is no number in front of the parenthesis, okay, it's automatically to be assumed to be a 1 right there. It's a 1 times. Now, the reason why I say positive 1 times is because because there is a positive sign in front of the parenthesis. So that's why this is positive 1 times -5, which we will talk about this in a different video, how we're gonna multiply and divide with negative. So for right now, I'm just gonna simply say positive 1 times -5 is just gonna be -5. My first term is still 8. So 8 minus 5 is gonna be positive 3. Okay? So remember, every term can only have one term. Okay? So whenever I see my term has multiple signs, I'm gonna go ahead and make them all into one sign. One sign for one term. All right, two addition sign outside the parenthesis tell me I got three terms. First term is -4. Second term is positive how much? Second term is really saying +1 times -9. All right, my last term is +4. Okay, so my second term, +1 times -9, is -9. So my second term is really just -9. First term is -4. Last term is +4. So I'm gonna combine -4 and +4 first. Term with different sign, mentally we will subtract. So when I normally take 4 minus 4, that should give me 0. So the -4 and the +4 kind of cancel each other out. So the only thing I got here is just -9. Okay, that will be my answer. All right. Make sure every term can only have one sign. Okay, every term can only have one sign. Now, if you know how to do plus and negative, okay, which is that will be fine. It just I don't never want students who saw a -4 minus 9 and write it as plus a -9, because that actually adding extra step in your mind of thinking about how to combine these two terms. So that's why I want to show students this particular way. I know I did -4 plus 4 first. If I want to do it from left to right, -4 minus 9, term with the same sign, you add, so that's -13. Okay, so I want students to be able to do this quickly. Okay, otherwise it's too much thinking involved. If we can remember term with the same sign we add, different sign we subtract, okay, then algebra gets a lot easier to understand. All right, let's try this one here on the left. Addition sign. I got two of those signs. I got three terms. I got me a +5 first term. Second term is +6. My third term is really +1 times -8. So my third term has two different signs. So +1 times -8 really tells me my third term is really just -8. First term is 5, second term is +6. So I'm going to do this problem from left to right because I know 5 plus 6 right away is 11. 11 minus 8 will give me a 3. Okay, that's my answer. All right, this one on the right, plus sign outside the parenthesis. So my second term and my third term both has two signs. All right, so let's make them all one sign each. So my second term is really a +1 times -12, which is just -12. My third term is really +1 times -27, which is just -27. All right, my first term is really just a +63. So this problem, now I'm just going to think of it as 63 minus 12 minus 27. Okay, 63 minus 12 should be 51. So 51 minus 27, that will be 24, I believe. So that's my answer, just 24. Okay. All right, let's try this one. So this time I got a lot. This thing gets long. Gets long simply means I got a lot of terms because all I see here is a bunch of plus signs outside the parenthesis. So I'm kind of break them down into terms. So I see my first term in front of the first plus sign is -103. Between the 2 plus sign, negative 15 is another term, but the plus sign that's in front of it go with the negative 15. Positive 86 is another term, and my last term is really positive how much? It's really positive 1 times negative 93. So my second term is really positive 1 times negative 15. So the second and the third and the fourth term has two signs, so let's make them into one sign before we combine them. So basically positive 1 times negative 15 is just negative 15. I'm not quite sure why my pen is been acting up a lot lately. All right, my last term, positive 1 times negative 93 is just negative 93. All right. My third term is positive 86. My first term is negative 103. Okay, so I still got same four terms. Now it just every term only has one sign. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to combine negative 103, negative 15, and negative 93 together first, because all three terms are negative. So terms with the same sign, mentally we will add. So when I add, that's taking 103, 15, and 93, add them all up. So that's 8 plus 3 is 11, 9, 10, 11. So that will be 211. Would it be a positive 211 or negative? Well, since all three terms are negative, it will be negative 211. All right, here I got a positive 86 is still there. So now, negative 211 plus 86, two term with different sign, mentally we will subtract. So if I take 211 subtract, that's 11 minus 6 is 5. This is 10. This is going to be 10. This is going to be 10 minus 8, which is 2. And 2 got borrowed earlier, so that will be 1. Oh. So that will be 125. I'm trying to write it. 125. Okay. All right. Would it be positive 125 or would it be negative 125? Well, because I got more negative term than positive, so my answer will be negative 125. Okay. So just remember now, every term can only have one sign. All right. So when every term only have one sign, we can easily know whether we need to add them or subtract them based on whether they have same sign or a different sign. All right, now let's try some with fractions, okay? Same thing, I got parentheses, okay? And the purpose of parentheses, to be honest, right now, for these problems, is just indicating that there is a negative number in the parentheses, okay? So these parentheses right now really serve no any other purpose right now, because it's just trying to indicate there's a negative sign in there. So plus sign right here, my second term, is really positive 1 times negative 1 over 6. So positive 1 times negative 1 over 6. Positive times a negative is just going to be a negative 1 over 6. So in front of it, I still got 4 over 15. So this is basically a subtraction of two fractions. So let's find our LCD real quick. LCD between 15 and 6 is going to be 30, just like we learned it in Module 2. All right, so for the 15 become the new 30, as an LCD, I got to multiply by 2. Numerator do the same thing, that's 8. The 6 become the new 30, which is times by 5. Numerator times by 5 is just 5. So 8 minus 5 is 3. So that would be 3 over 30, which I can reduce them by 3. That would be 1 over 10. That's all it is. All right, let's try this one. Plus sign, my third term is really saying positive 1 times negative half. Positive 1 times negative half is simply just a negative half. All right, my second term in the middle is still 2 over 9. My first term is still positive. It's still going to be 1 over 10. So let's see what the LCD is between 10, 9, and 2. Let's combine all three fractions together, which I kind of showed y'all this before. I always trying to combine all of them together because we can actually do that. We can do all together because the rules for adding and subtracting fraction or for combining fraction is all the same. So I'm going to use the number 2 to go into 10 and 2 because there's no one number can go into all three of them. So that's 5, 9, and 1. So now between 5, 9, and 1, there's not one number can go into all three of them. So we multiply all the number on the outside, which we know 2 times 5 is 10, 10 times 9 is 90. So my LCD is going to be 90. All right, so let's find our equivalent fraction. 10 go to 90 times by 9, numerator times by 9, that's 9. 9 becomes the new 90 times by 10. 2 times 10 is 20. 2 becomes a new 90 times by 45. So numerator times by 45, which is 45. So let's combine our numerator. 9 plus 20 is 29. Now that same 29 is going to minus the numerator 45. So terms with different sign. One is positive 29, the other one is negative 45. Term with different sign, we will subtract. Okay. Term with different sign, we will subtract. So normally 45 subtract a 29 is going to be, this is 15 minus 9, which is 6. 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. So they're going to give me 16 over 90. Would it be positive 16 or negative? Well, since I got more negative term, that will be negative 16 over 90. All right, I believe I can reduce this. If I reduce by 2, that will give me negative, if I reduce by 2, 8 over 45. That will be my answer. Okay. All right. So, I'm just kind of afraid, when you read the tutorial, they're going to show you something like plus a negative is really subtracting, which is correct, but I just don't want students get caught up on when you write a subtraction sign, then your mind is thinking is subtracting. It's not always subtracting when you see a subtraction sign when it comes to dealing with negatives. Because when both terms are negative, okay, or negative 2 subtract 4, you're not actually subtracting. Mentally, you're actually adding. So that's why I don't really like to show students how to do plus a negative, type of methods, because it is kind of confusing, from time to time. So if we can make every term with one sign, we just say same sign we add, different sign we subtract. Okay, and so why the problem is written this way, other than just trying to indicating a negative? One of the technique is something called the addition method. Okay, that's basically what the textbook is trying to, or the tutorial on the homework is trying to show you, the addition method. Make everything into addition, okay? That comes probably from the Common Core, probably. Okay, I just like to show students just every term has one sign, and we can figure out whether we need to add or subtract after we see every term is one sign. All right, my second term, positive 1 times negative 1/5 is really just negative 1/5. All right, my third term, positive 1 times negative 2 over 7 is really a negative 2 over 7. Okay, my half is still up front. So my LCD between 2, 5, and 7, I think it's going to be 70 this time. So 2 will go into 70 35 times. So my numerator times by 35, which is 35. 5 will go into 70 about 14 times. So numerator times by 14. 7 go into 70, increase 10 times. So my numerator times by 10, which is 20. Excuse me, 20. So when it comes to combining my numerator, now I see 35 minus 14 minus 20. All right, 35 minus 14, I believe, is 21 minus 20, which is 1. So my answer, 1 over 70. All right, so in this lecture video, I show you again what the word term representing, and I will begin to use a lot of this wording, okay? Term, like terms, combined like terms, term with the same sign we add, term with different sign we subtract. And always keep in mind, okay, always keep in mind, every term can only have one sign. So as we go along in Module 8, these parentheses, okay, where inside of it consists of one negative number will begin to kind of go away when we attaching variable with all these terms, okay? And you will see it as you get deeper into Module 8. All right, that will conclude this lecture video. Thank you for watching.